everyone. I'm Helen, a former Bazel team member and a co-founder at Enchflow, speeding up your Bazel builds with free remote execution, caching, and UI. Jointly with Cynthia, a software engineer at Stripe and avid contributor to Bazel, Envoy, and other projects, we will share practical learnings to improve the contributor experience. In my opening remarks at the very first BazelCon in 2017, I said, "Welcome to the first annual BazelCon." I'm delighted to be here at the 5th annual. We've grown a lot as a community, and that means Bazel community gained significantly more contributors. Today, we will share with you the impact community contributions have had on the project and zoom in on specific contributor path and practical tools. We'll also discuss how we can improve the contributor experience as a Bazel community. Bazel was first released in March 2015 and achieved beta status by September. Bazel 1.0 was released in October 2019. And I'd like to say that it took the open source community by storm, but the adoption and contributions happened quite incrementally and expanded significantly in recent years. To highlight some of the longest standing contribution, here we go. Many of these contributions actually came from Bazel's early adopters, companies like SpaceX, Wix, Stripe, and Uber. For example, Rules Scala, an initial collaboration between Stripe and Wix, happened in February 2016. Keith has been a prominent contributor of Rules Apple, with as many as 60 contributors involved now, many of them external to Google. Some projects like Build Farm and Build Barn have been primarily created by external contributors and are now used by many companies at enterprise scale. And Rules Scotland, a project which was created in February 2018, is one of the most popular projects with contributors. Open source contributions don't just come in the form of code. We have an active community of contributors who file issues and improve documentation. In fact, some of these prominent documentation changes led to creation of many other contributor projects. And through the documentation, I met Cynthia and was inspired by her story and her contributor experience, which I'd like her to share.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cynthia, and here over the next couple slides, I'm going to discuss a general path to contribution. It's going to be useful for every single project in Bazel, as well as just projects in general. It's the path that I follow every time I'm looking to contribute to a new project, and hopefully it's helpful to you whether you're newly contributing to a project or if you maintain a project. There will be some tips in there for things that you can do. So let's go in. So the first step of any contribution is to investigate which issue you're going to choose. And the one thing I want you to remember before you do that is that contributing is very hard. Everyone gets confused sometimes whether they're a Bazel veteran or whether they're just coming new to Bazel. So you may be looking through that list of issues and you may be having a really hard time finding an issue that you find is totally understandable, and that's okay. Right? Everyone has that fear of contributing, even if you've been, like I said, a long-time user. And to prove it, I link this Bazel issue below, issue 12386 on the core Bazel repo, where this is an issue that I actually filed and I just got confused multiple times throughout. That's a particular quote of mine where it's like, I just have no idea what was happening, and we actually had to hop on a call in order to figure it out. Like, these things happen. It is 100% okay to get confused. Don't worry about it. The important thing is taking that first step and learning over time. Everyone's always learning. No one knows everything. So what do we do next? Well, the first thing I would recommend looking for is looking for issues that are particularly tagged for beginners or people who are getting started, right? So many of the rules repo will do these beginner tags as well as getting started. Bazel Core doesn't yet, but most of the rules repos do. So what happens if you run into a repo without these labels? Well, the best thing I would recommend is to look for active issues in areas that you feel most comfortable with. So if you feel most comfortable with documentation because you're just a user and you don't want to jump into code, or if you're feeling particularly knowledgeable about the way a certain thing works in Bazel, look for issues that are along those lines and are active. Because if the issue is active, the chance of someone responding to you as you have questions goes way up. So finding those active issues and not droning up issues from 4 years ago is a good way to make sure that you actually get some support and some help as you move on. And the last thing is reproducibility is key. Even if you don't fully understand the issue, if you can reproduce it, you can mess around with it as much as you want, whether that be in a debugger, whether that be actually just changing things to try and figure out how something works, how the docs, if you have a reproduction case or you're able to create one that fully represents the issue, you're then able to do everything else. So always look for that reproduction case before taking that issue. So you've chosen your issue. The next thing I would recommend looking for, if you can't find an issue this way, is to actually look at mentorships. So sometimes this is just sort of like a lower maintenance where someone has commented on this issue like, hey, I can help. This is a huge thing that you can do if you're a frequent contributor to a project. Even if you don't have time to take to an issue, just letting people know that you can be there to answer any questions they have can be a huge relief to someone who's looking for their first issue. Right? This is a very, very helpful thing to do, and being that helpful source to them is very helpful. Some projects also have these sort of like higher maintenance programs, right, where you have to sign up for a quarter and some mentorships sign up. This isn't as common in Bazel, but I still want to call it out because I hope Bazel does it more. The CNCF does a great mentorship program. So if you're looking for any ideas, they have a very, very good mentorship program that I definitely want to call out. Anyway, that's all about choosing issues. What do you do after you've chosen an issue? Well, the first thing I would do before actually commenting, hey, I'm going to take this issue, is make sure you're fully set up and ready to go. So if you're working on docs, make sure that you've checked out the documentation locally and you can not only view it, but edit it and see your changes in your browser, right? If you're working on code, make sure that you can build all of the code and you can test all of the code without any errors. So that way you're sure you're working from a good base. I actually want to call out Bazel Core here because Bazel Core has a really good documentation setup for building Bazel either with Bazel or just from scratch for the first time. I followed it multiple times and it's worked every single time I followed it. So I really want to call them out as a fantastic job. So once you have all of that coding, all of that documentation ready and set up and you've chosen your issue, you can go ahead and make your change and throw up a pull request. And that's what comes next. So once you throw up your pull request, the important thing to remember is empathy. Empathy is the key word for working with pull request reviews because sometimes reviewers are going to leave comments that may sort of ride that line, and it's best to always follow it with the best intentions, putting the best foot forward for them. Everyone wants what's best for the project, and they may not word it the best way because communication is hard, especially when you're not physically talking to someone. But as long as you're empathetic, you will have a good PR review experience, hopefully. Hopefully there's no other bad experiences. And I want to call out here, I've seen some people take this empathy and PR reviews a little bit too far to the point where they are just taking whatever the maintainer asks them to do without fully understanding it. So don't be afraid to sort of ask the maintainer to explain if they're asking you to make a change and you're not sure why, or even if you don't agree with it. This is a particular documentation change I made that's actually still open at this time. I have to go and close it. But a documentation change I made where someone was suggesting a new wording from what I chosen, and as much as I'm happy to change it, right, it didn't strike at the issue, the heart of the issue of why I filed the pull request. So I was able to say, hey, that doesn't quite get why I was filing this pull request. What do you think about something else? And acting with that empathy and just not, calling them out and saying, no, that doesn't work, and saying, no, this is really what I was trying to get at. What do you think about this other example, though? Just that general form of empathy has led to a really good PR review experience. So once you have filed your PR, then comes all of the fun part, taking the next issue. That's what everyone likes to think of, right? You just take the next issue and you take the next issue and you take the next issue. That can be a really good way to learn parts that you already know more, right, as you take sort of these larger and larger projects. But I actually really want to call out a second thing, which is providing help in either Slack or in other issues. This is a great way to learn more about a project, especially in an area that you don't know as well. Even if the question has already been answered by someone who has known the answer, just being able to dig in and find out why that answer is correct is a great way to just learn about other parts of the system without any sort of high risk or just delving through the code base mindlessly, right? Someone asks a pointed question and you go and dig all the way through and figure out what the answer is and why the answer is that way and share that context back. This not only helps you, but the person who is asking the issue. This is a great way to help sort of expand your knowledge in a code base, and it's something I see that's way too often overlooked. So definitely make sure to provide support. And that's it. That's how you become a Bazel contributor.
All right. As you heard from Cynthia, there are quite a number of interesting things we can do as contributors to Bazel. So what can we do better as a community? First of all, adding a beginner issue label. That seems like a helpful way and is a good example we've seen in the Envoy community. As a contributor of a particularly complex project, we also suggest that you send your design document first to get feedback, and so that you don't surprise by a super complex PR that requires much more significant review. An active code owners and rules maintainers community also means that we can get feedback on designs from each other or from a selected group of people in the community that can help. For example, it was exciting to see Google add some of the prominent contributors to remote executions, such as George, Ed, and Ulf, as co-donors for remote execution parts of core Bazel. Another example is the rules, where there's a very active community, and it's a great way to get started with your first contribution. Creation of SIGs, special interest groups. We've seen that from other projects like TensorFlow and Kubernetes can help drive community discussion and prioritization. We already have a good start with remote execution led by Stephen and rules authors led by Alex. And mentorship. As Cynthia mentioned, this is an important aspect of a contributor success. And as external contributors, we can self-organize to create a mentorship list of individuals on topics that they can mentor. And as a contributor, you can reach out to that group. Contact me if you have ideas for how to best implement this for the Bazel community. And more tailored training, especially focused on the contributor path. In partnership with Benjamin Mushko, who created the Getting Started with Bazel book, we are co-developing the Bazel Learning Paths program. This is a hands-on program that addresses diverse delivery methods such as docs, instruction, and code labs. And we are open sourcing the content to the Bazel community, starting with early version pretty much now, and welcome your feedback and help in testing things out and making it accessible to all. Let us know how you'd like to partner on it. This is our Bazel community. We get more value through contribution, design and idea exchange, and partnerships. I reached out to Bazel experts, companies, and individuals, and most of them are excited in partnerships with us to make this community stronger through tools, documentation, and sharing of our experiences. Join us and join the party to make your mark on Bazel.